The countdown is on until new leaders and lawmakers make their way into the Ohio State House. Ahead on Face the State, Ohio Senate Minority Leader Nickie joins us, and she'll talk about what is still left to be done in the coming days and which new laws could be passed in the year ahead.
Was there a sense that you thought you were going to pull this off, or was there a point where it seemed like this was going in the wrong direction?
During his final days on Capitol Hill, Ohio's Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown is reflecting on his upset loss and what he believes cost him the election.
You can't overcome that, even though it was a close race in the end.
And Haitian migrants in Springfield, Ohio, now fearing deportation. Coming up, we are hearing from local leaders who say some migrants have already left the state, even the country. Face the State starts right now. Right now, this morning, we are coming off what's been a busy week at the State House as the 135th General Assembly is trying to finish up business before time expires. Thanks for joining us for Face the State. I'm Angela Ann. Doug has the day off. Well, right now, several major bills are one step closer to becoming law here in Ohio, but time is running out for many other pieces of legislation. If they don't receive approval from both chambers by December 31st, those bills will have to be reintroduced next year. That includes one bill hoping to better protect unconscious patients from abusive doctors. House Bill 89 is now on its way to the Senate after unanimously passing the House. This proposed law would prohibit medical professionals or students from conducting intimate exams on an anesthetized or unconscious patient without consent, unless it is medically necessary or other certain exceptions. Now, if that law is broken, the licensing board would be allowed to discipline the doctor. And despite heavy pushback from cities and business groups, the House passed a bill to require local governments to pay more into the public pension system that covers police and firefighters. Under House Bill 256, the employer contribution rate would go up an additional 4.5% to 24% for police. That matches the current rate for firefighters. This would also cost cities an additional $80 million a year. Those against it argue this will make it harder for cities to hire new officers and offer pay raises. House Bill 256 now heads to the Senate. And a bill aimed at making it easier to adopt a child is now on its way to the governor's desk after passing the House and the Senate unanimously. Among other changes, House Bill 5 would increase the amount a birth mother can receive for living expenses from $3,000 to $6,000. This would also allow time spent with relatives who plan to adopt a child to count towards that required 6-month waiting period before adoption. And House Bill 5 will allow children to be adopted without their parents' consent if the parent had not provided, quote, meaningful and regular maintenance for 1 year before that adoption petition is filed. And as we approach 2025, we are less than a month away until the next General Assembly takes power. We'll see some new leaders stepping up in the Ohio House and the Senate. But one leader that is staying in her role is Senate Minority Leader Nickie. She's a Democrat from Northeast Ohio who was first elected to the Senate in 2018 and spent 8 years in the House before that. Senator, we want to thank you now for joining us. We do want to start also by being transparent here today by saying that we also invited the incoming Senate Majority Leader to join us, Republican Bob McCauley, but he was unavailable and declined our request. But now, Senator Antonio, let's start with you with this current General Assembly question. What can Ohioans really expect to come out of the State House before the year is over?
Well, first of all, thanks for the invitation. And I think what people can expect is some of the bills that are that you highlighted clearly that are moving at this point. Again, may or may not make it across the finish line. We can start probably with the pension reform bill for police and fire. bringing police up to where the firefighters' pensions are at. The current president of the Senate has indicated that he doubts there's time for us to delve into that. This General Assembly, my expectation is that bill, if it should not pass the Senate this time, it's going to come back in the next General Assembly. But I believe that it requires, and what's going to be required of legislators is to really delve into how this is funded. Because we heard from our mayors, we've been hearing from our mayors in cities across the state saying they can't afford to pay for this. As many people may remember, the local government funds were cut during the previous administration and have stayed. And so we need to take a look at, are we starving our cities and keeping those local government funds from them? And this may be the conversation that triggers another look at increasing those funds so that our cities can maintain a level of law enforcement that's necessary to keep citizens safe.
Sure. And Senator, I know that there's been discussion of how do we fund it. Like you said, that's a critical piece. Some people have discussed maybe some of the sales tax revenue from marijuana sales now that are legal here in Ohio. Let me ask you this then. Is this going to be one of your top legislative priorities for the next General Assembly, since it doesn't look like we'll pass the finish line on this one?
I think it's going to be, as far as everyone should be able to have a pension to be able to retire on. I'm sure it's going to be on the list of priorities as we go into the next General Assembly, should it not cross the finish line, this GA.
You've been a consistent advocate for the Ohio Fairness Act. It would protect against employment discrimination, housing discrimination. Also, it would provide more protection for LGBTQ plus people in our state. How do you plan to build bipartisan support for this? Because I know this is something you've been pushing for years now.
Well, we continue to have the conversation. We continue to introduce the bill. The interesting thing is that the bill has so much support from business, large and small. It has support from the Ohio Chamber of Commerce, the Ohio Manufacturing Association. Those are not necessarily seen as progressive organizations in the political sense, but they are pragmatic and practical. And they understand that passing this bill really says that Ohio is open for business to all people. If we're going to increase our employees coming into the state, we need workers at every level of business. Then this is an important bill for us to continue to talk to. It's also the right thing to do. But I have to say that the way we've been able to build support, we can all agree that in order for Ohio to be successful in the 21st century, we need workers that want to not only come to Ohio or stay in Ohio, especially younger people. We want them to raise their families here. And young people absolutely want an environment that welcomes all people.
Let me ask you this then. Where do you see any specific Republican-led initiatives that could have that bipartisan compromise between both parties?
I think some of the issues in terms of housing and property taxes, there have been studies, a committee focused specifically on a very bipartisan task force. Many pieces of legislation have come out of that, especially addressing housing affordability. We know that that's an issue for people, again, across the state of Ohio. And whether you live in an urban environment, a rural area, or suburban somewhere in between, housing affordability is at critical levels. And so we have a number of pieces of legislation that absolutely, I believe, will make a difference, and that there's bipartisan support for. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, Senator, I apologize. That's all the time we have, but certainly you have a very busy year ahead. It sounds like it. And probably a busy end of the year here as well. But thank you again, Senator, for joining us today on Face the State.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again. We do also want to talk about something else that has been making news here, improving traffic safety all throughout Ohio, but specifically in the city of Springfield. This happened in the past week, a new initiative that will help the immigrant community in Clark County learn safe driving skills. Now, just days ago, the Maria Tiberi Foundation, along with the Virtual Driver Interactive, donated more than 10 new driving simulators to the Ohio Traffic Safety Office. These machines will be placed throughout the Springfield area. 10 TV's Dom Tiberi and his family created this foundation after losing their daughter Maria in a distracted driving crash more than a decade ago. Since then, Dom has worked tirelessly to educate young people all across our state on the dangers of distracted driving.
When we lost Maria, we didn't know what we were going to do, but I knew we had to do something because, you know, we're losing too many people on our highways.
And with the influx of the immigrant population growing over the last decade, the city of Springfield continues to battle issues with that growth. Reporter Rochelle Aline walks us through why the state is stepping in now to help families.
According to the city of Springfield's website, they have anywhere from 12 to 15,000 immigrants overall in this area. Governor DeWine has said that recent influx of immigrants has put a strain on certain local resources like the school system and healthcare. And Thursday, he announced that he has invested more than $5 million to help improve things. But there are changes that come as we're also hearing reports that certain Haitian migrants are actually leaving the city following comments made by President-elect Donald Trump.
Pastor Reginald Silenzo says he came to Springfield from Haiti on heavenly assignment.
Because
the Lord told them there's a community that needs his help.
But as of late, members of his flock are now fleeing.
Quite a few of them have already left Springfield.
This all comes after recent comments by President-elect Donald Trump, who has spoken about mass deportation of migrants. Trump has also discussed a rollback of the federal government's temporary protected status program, which many migrants, including those in Springfield, use to remain in the U.S. legally. At a press conference in Springfield on Thursday, we pressed Governor Mike DeWine about it.
I want to know what your response is to that vow and what message do you have to the Haitians who are worried about that status?
Well, my position has not changed. You know, I made it very clear a month ago that I thought that would be a mistake.
DeWine went on to advise Haitian immigrants to consult with an attorney before making any decisions to leave. But despite this, the pastors we've spoken to say more than a dozen Haitians have already left for Canada or other U.S. states.
Is there really anything that any leader can say to reassure the Haitian community here in Springfield?
I think if they a press conference would be great by telling them America is a country of law. No one would just grab you on the street, deport you as long as you are legal.
We wanted to know what guidance the federal government is also providing on this issue, so I contacted the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services Department for more information. I'll share the comments and the links that they provided on our website, 10tv.com. In Springfield, Rochelle Aline, 10TV News.
Rochelle, thank you. Well, after Democrats lost control of the White House and the U.S. Senate, Ohio's outgoing senator is now weighing in on what went wrong and what's next for the party.
One, are you out of touch on those issues? Two, should you guys have done a better job in pushing back?
In just 2 minutes, what Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown says his party needs to do moving forward if they want to get back on the winning path. Plus, people in Central Ohio preparing for technological growth, why they say data centers moving to the Silicon Heartland could shake up their peace and quiet. Welcome back to Face the State. Now, just weeks remain until Ohio's longtime Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown vacates his office. He'll be replaced by incoming Republican Senator Bernie Moreno. The new Congress is set to be sworn in on January 3rd. And now Brown is sitting down with our CNN correspondent Manu Raju, reflecting on his loss and the limited time he has left in D.C.
How hard was November 5th for you?
But I lost, but we ran ahead of the national ticket.
Was there a sense that you thought you were going to pull this off, or was there a point where it seemed like this was going in the wrong direction?
No, I expected to win because I'm out a lot, and I talked to I mean, I talk to workers, I talk to people year round. I come home, I listen to people, that's where my ideas come from. I expected to win because of that, because I saw the enthusiasm in the crowds. What I didn't see is the ad they did at the end where Trump said voting for Sherrod Brown is voting against me. And when the leader of your ticket runs 12 points behind almost, you can't overcome that, even though it was a close race in the end.
So Trump made the difference here.
A lot of things made the difference. I'd say it's the money in Trump. I mean, that kind of money just for a month after month after month with nasty negative ads, all of which were found to be not true by neutral fact checkers. I guess that's how you win a race. You lie, you spend a lot of money, and then you, as my opponent, hoped that your candidate, Trump in this case, would win by a lot.
So you don't think that Bernie Moreno ran a clean race?
You can be the judge of that. I think when you run ads and they're proven to be lies by fact checkers, you're a pretty smart analyst, Manu, and you can connect that dot and let you do it.
How much do you think that the Democratic brand hurts you in your state?
I don't particularly like the term brand, but the Democrats, since NAFTA, workers have drifted away from the Democratic Party. To me, politics is not really left or right, it's whose side you're on. Voters in Ohio know I'm on their side. I think we've drifted away as a party, and I mean, to Democrats, my mission is, as it was in the Senate, it will be the same out of the Senate, is to make the Democratic Party the party of workers.
Specifically how? Because how have you guys drifted away?
A Trump judge in East Texas knocked down. One judge cost this is 4 million workers that would have benefited. One judge, think about that. I'm pretty angry about it. As you can see, one judge denied 4 million workers in this country their overtime. We ought to be talking about that. My guess is you've never covered it. My guess is very little media have covered it. And I know that very few Democrats have talked about it. And Trump and his crowd, his corporate crowd that's always looking out for their rich friends, hope it goes away and hope it gets ignored. But I'm not going to let it get ignored.
But why are the working class voters moving to him?
I think that we don't appear to be fighting for them. So they get distracted on issues that, first of all, we'll use inflation as an example. Republicans put inflation totally at the feet of higher government spending. That's not what caused inflation. Don't blame it on government spending, for gosh sakes. The answer is that corporations have higher stock buybacks, corporate profits are up, stock market's up, wages have been flat. We need to take on those interest groups that cause that. And some people, some economists called it transitory. You remember that a few months ago.
I mean, the Biden administration was calling it that.
And that's the mistake we made. I mean, we've seen workers bleed from our party for 30 years. But we've got to bring them back.
Do you think Harris was out of touch on those issues?
She had 100 days to run a campaign. I'm not going to look back and be the critic of that. That's your job.
What about just on the cultural issues itself? I mean, they came after you on transgender issues. You had to cut an ad defending yourself on this issue.
Well, I cut an ad showing they lied.
Yeah.
And people like you, I don't know if you particularly, Manu, but many media fact checkers said it was a lie. And that's what they do. They lie about, they take an issue that they know polls well, they lie about it, and they put, in this case, they spent $40 million on 8 different ads on that issue.
On transgender issues.
Yeah, they weren't talking about how to make Ohio a better state. They're not doing their job on education. They're not doing their job on healthcare. They're not doing their job on creating jobs.
But they're winning elections. Are they successful?
They're winning elections in part because they've rigged the system. They've made it harder to vote. They've changed ballot language in a dramatic way with the last election. They did that with abortion rights. It didn't work in that case.
Yes, they spent all this money against you guys. One, are you out of touch on those issues? 2, should you guys have done a better job in pushing back?
I'm not out of touch with those issues. I go home, I hear people all the time. I know how they focus group and they lie. I mean, how do you call me out of touch when they lie about an issue?
I mean, I guess it's been an effective campaign tactic. Do you think it was an effective campaign?
So if you want to be so cynical as a reporter that, oh, it worked, we applaud them, so they're so smart.
I'm not applauding them. I'm just saying that if it works, right?
Well, yeah, but your job as someone who is a fair player in this, and I think you are, I've known you a long time, is rather than commenting on it works, comment on they lied, and that's not a fair way to play.
How should your party approach this? Because these attacks.
Party needs to talk to workers. I ran way better than the national ticket, in spite of those attack ads, because many people believe them, no matter what, that's how it happens, because voters trusted me, because they know I fight for them in the workplace.
Trump 2.0. How should Democrats position themselves?
I'm not here, I don't know. But I do think we've got to do it through the prism, as I do in my state, of the dignity of work.
Well, people living in the Silicon Heartland are preparing for a shakeup in their neighborhood. After the break, how Ohioans are getting ready for data centers to move in as the companies barter for power. This morning, we are looking at the impact of industry growth in Central Ohio. Some of the biggest names in the world of data centers are in Columbus this week, arguing over how much they should pay for electricity. Names like Google, Amazon, Meta, and Microsoft are all requesting massive amounts of utility power from AEP. As 10 TV's Kevin Landers reports, there's a lot at stake, not only for the companies, but the people who live in those areas where those data centers want to build.
Amazon, which plans to transform this empty farm field into a data center, along with other data center giants, are pushing back against the plan by AEP to hold them accountable for the energy they use. Meanwhile, those who live across the street from the project are worried about how this will change their quality of life.
Amy Hale doesn't have to look far to see what's coming outside her front door.
Yep.
That empty field to the right of her home will be Amazon's new $2 billion data center.
We were bummed when we first heard the news, honestly. We like the peace and quiet out here.
Delaware County isn't alone in the data center boom. Companies like Google, Meta, Microsoft, and Walmart are adding data centers in Central Ohio. Those who live near them want people to know they're not pleased.
I appreciate you getting our side of the story, because the first time, people that don't live out in the country aren't really affected too much, I think. So it's nice that you came out here at the farmland to see, what's your view on it?
On behalf of Microsoft Corporation.
Today, some of the most powerful law firms in Columbus, representing some of the biggest companies in the world, began to make their case against AEP's plan to require data centers to pay 85% of the energy they plan to use for the next 12 years. They want all energy users to share the cost, not just data centers. AEP's Vice President of Transmission explained why data centers need to pay more for the huge demand they're asking for.
Central Ohio is where we are seeing significant growth that is driving significant transmission constraints, which if not addressed, they will impact the broader stability and reliability of the entire grid.
AEP says this isn't about a rate increase for homeowners, but to address massive energy demand.
This over here is sold.
As for Amy Hale, the power lines across from her home foretell what's coming. And while she says she has no plans to move, she's preparing for her quiet corner of Delaware County to change forever when the construction of Amazon's data center begins.
What is your biggest worry?
I think just the peace and quiet. I think not being able to enjoy the nature anymore.
The Public Utilities Commission isn't expected to rule on this energy case until sometime next year. The rest of the nation is watching as Ohio becomes the first to set energy rates for these large data centers. In Delaware County, Kevin Landers, 10 TV News.
Kevin, thank you. And thank you for joining me for Face the State this week. I'm Angela Ann. We'll see you again next Sunday at 11:30.